Bud Frazier sometimes wandered through St. Luke's Hospital like a large wraith in a white coat. For decades, he had traveled from his office in the Texas Heart Institute through the maze of attached hallways that was St. Luke's, a worn paperback perpetually open in his hand, often something by Shakespeare, rarely anything that could remotely be considered popular. At 75, Bud had earned certain privileges: the right to walk and read, which kept a lot of people out of his way; the right to leave towels in swirls and eddies on the floor of the private bathroom in his office; the right to check his cell phone at society galas because people assumed he was checking on patients, and sometimes he was. A few years back, Bud had had to give up his black cowboy boots for running shoes because surgery, especially lengthy surgeries, could be as hard on your legs and your back as it was on your hands. He'd had 2 brand-new titanium knees put in last summer, and had been glad when he was able to give up the fancy cane he'd had to use. It made pretty women solicitous, which made him grouchy. Bud's wife, Rachel, liked to describe her husband, generously, as an absent-minded professor, but like many people at the top of their fields, Bud had lots of folks looking after the mundane details of his life so that he could focus on his work. He often forgot his wallet. He did not balance his checkbook. He did not do email. Once, when he could not find a parking place for a gala, he parked his old Jaguar, a gift from a grateful patient, on the front patio of the Houston Museum of Natural Science, barely missing the fountains. Everyone forgave him his trespasses. Bud could list, among a very long list of friends and associates and patients and their family members, everyone from Mehmet Oz to the memoirist Mary Carr, from Dick Cheney to Bono, from Olivia de Havilland to various Middle Eastern and European royalty. He had a long-suffering assistant named Libby Schwenke, who was charged with getting him from point A to point B, whether it was from Houston to Kazakhstan or just across the Texas Medical Center, which, unfortunately for her, was the largest in the world. Even so, Bud was perennially late, famous for slipping into a party or a lecture long after it was in progress, which allowed him to be simultaneously unobtrusive and a center of attention. Time for Bud was negotiable after so many years operating on the very sick, who didn't follow schedules either. So here he was, at the crack of dawn, alone. Docs, a lot younger than Bud, with better knees but slower hands, were still at home next to their sleeping wives at 5:30 in the morning. Whether he could admit it or not, Bud preferred his office to his home, surrounded by the books that were always in danger of tumbling off the shelves, valuable first editions and ratty paperbacks, Plutarch, Dickens, Dostoevsky, a few nods to the likes of Hilary Mantel and Larry McMurtry. His literary tastes were a lot more high-minded than those of the average medical student rotating through the Texas Heart Institute, a fact he sometimes couldn't resist noting to his med students. When it came to literature, Bud was an equal opportunity snob. Introduced to U2 frontman Bono by a wealthy friend, Bud was appalled when the Irish rock star didn't immediately recognize some lines Bud recited from Yeats. Bud opened the door and stepped into the outer office, with the bank of secretarial cubicles on one side and a wall of framed photos and clippings on the other. Because there wasn't any natural light here, the pictures were as fresh as the day they had been taken. Photos of Bud with his mentors, Dr. Michael DeBakey and Dr. Denton Cooley, who had been among the most famous heart surgeons of their day in the years from 1960 to 1980 or so. In another photo, Bud posed with Christian Barnard, the South African surgeon who had shocked the world and set off major envy attacks among his colleagues by performing the first human heart transplant in 1969. There was a photo of Bud with the longest-living heart transplant patient in the world, his patient, and next to it a 20-year-old story from the New York Times about the success of the left ventricular assist device. Bud had an impressive collection of medals, and on the highest shelf above his assistant's desk, a tenuously crowded collection of crystal vases and plaques etched with his name. There was a framed portrait with a quote from Teddy Roosevelt, a favorite of many aggrieved surgeons, about the man in the arena who, if he fails, fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Close to that was another maxim: no one gets in to see the wizard, not nobody, not no-how. A former student had written, quoting the Wizard of Oz. It was an inside joke. Everyone got in. Bud Frazier was incapable of telling anyone no.